The boys are here. The boys are here. The boys are here. Assalamu alaikum. This is Aquib welcoming you back to another episode of Boys in the Cave. I'm joined by my fellow co-hosts Josh and Tanzim, and we're about to tackle our next topic, Muslim youth identity. So boys, how are we feeling today?
Yeah, man. Today's like weather, and then I see Josh drinking some coffee. I don't know how that works.
As always, bro.
I don't know. Like you were mentioning before we started,
Also,
you feel like you just drank coffee and stuff.
Yeah,
you have that
yeah.
groggy feeling.
you have that anxiety feeling when you drink like 2 or 3 shots and your body starts tingling and you just feel... it's a weird sensation, isn't it, Josh?
No, it's like your body sort of adapts to a certain level after you've been drinking coffee a while.
Oh,
So
yeah.
pretty much now I'm set on 3 shots, and that's what I have every day, no more than that. And if I have more than that, then I get like shaky and I get like anxious and stuff, and your insides start burning.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I had this funny story.
What's up?
It's like I almost passed out once. I had like 8 shots. It's like
8 shots.
Yeah, 8 shots. And then I was like, I was on the bus. I was like getting lightheaded.
It's like, wait,
My
I
head
didn't do
was
marijuana.
like
What's
my-
happening?
My head was banging. All this stuff. Like,
How much woke did you get after the 8 shots, man?
no, it's like it was really dumb. But the coffee tasted really good. I couldn't stop. It was like a special, I don't know, special release flavor or something. It was really dumb. But I guess it's the halal way.
I don't get like, how does the whole coffee thing work? Like, because I have chai latte. It's not coffee. Like, what distinguish? I don't even know the dynamics behind it. So like, can
Nah,
you feel
but
like
it's just like Australian culture. It's nothing. It's just once you learn it, it's just like whatever. It's not meant to be anything like hip or anything. It's just chai latte. Like
what's chai latte then?
it's nothing. It's
Well,
just
you
it's
drink
just,
it.
it's just milk. It's just
Wait,
milk,
it's-
milk and spices. No coffee at all.
Oh really?
Yeah.
So
what you were drinking
the
this
whole
whole
time
time?
I've been drinking. I think it keeps me awake. Does it keep me
Nah, it
awake?
just tastes good.
So
It
it's just
tastes
like
good.
my mind playing with
Yeah,
me.
yeah, yeah.
So
exactly.
tea, there's coffee, and then there's
A latte
random
is
stuff in the middle. We don't know what to call it.
Yeah, you just have to get used to the terminology, and then you just roll with
So,
it.
so what's it like with tea? It's just
Tea is just
different,
leaves.
like,
Coffee
leaves, yeah, yeah.
is with shots, and a latte.
So what's
A latte is with coffee, except the chai latte, because that's like chai.
wait? Oh, so latte has coffee,
It has coffee generally. Yeah.
and why is it already sweet? They just have all that spices stuff.
No, that's only a chai latte. I have regular latte. It's not sweet. You have to add sugar.
So you don't like having it like too
No,
sweet.
I don't have any sugar at all. No.
So it's because it's bad, right? Sugar's meant to be bad or something.
No, but it ruins the coffee flavor, bro.
Oh,
That's
does
it.
it?
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
you have that distinct coffee
Yeah,
flavor.
yeah,
you
yeah,
really
yeah.
Because I like the sweetness.
Once you
in
get
it.
proper into it, yeah. I've been drinking coffee since like year 10. Like I started with like
okay.
sugar and stuff and like I don't know, vanilla flavor, whatever. But then I'm like, nah, I need straight hard coffee.
Yeah, speaking about that, it's
And
like
it-
interesting how you talk about like just the culture and the hipness. That's like kind of gives us kind of the idea of Muslim culture in general. You know what I mean? Like you grew up with something with that kind of culture that you in with. Whereas I feel like that kind of is parallel to like the Muslim culture, where some people just grow up with it and they don't really kind of like question it, or like or they have to kind of go hard into it to kind of
Yeah.
understand. Like
Right.
the whole dynamics of the coffee scene, bro. I've been
Bro, no,
drinking
no,
it just
bro.
like
See,
To fit in?
see, a lot of people ask me, "Oh, bro, what coffee do you drink?" Like, as if it's some deep discussion. Bro, like it's like whatever. Like, once you get used to it, you just do it. It's not. There's no point trying to be like, "Oh yeah, what do you drink? Do you see the different flavors?" Yeah, I do.
Intellectual discussion from
but
it.
you don't have to. It's not that deep. You don't have to talk about it. That's it. I just feel like really like bougie and all that by talking about coffee. I just don't. I just drink it.
and
So you don't promote it.
No, I just have coffee. Yeah,
It just does its job.
yeah, it's just a
so
fair job.
a kind of small thing like that, as in terms of coffee, like you don't want to delve into it, but I feel like us Muslims, we don't want to delve into just like the culture and talking about Islam. And I think like that's a big I know, mad segue, right?
Mad segue.
But like just that kind of deep thing in terms of life and death and what's going to happen to you. People don't question it. Like I was watching a video last night, bro, like literally on this my good mate Muhammad Hijab videos again.
Mashallah.
Truly, he was just talking about, okay, you hopped onto a train, you wake up in a train, yeah?
Yeah.
If you wake up in a train, what's the first things you'll think? If you just one day just woke up in a train,
Like, where am I going?
Yeah, where am I?
where are you going? Yeah, anything
yeah.
else?
And when's the train going to stop? How did I get here?
How did I get
Yeah,
here?
where am I?
And where it's gonna go? Yeah. So why don't people in that situation will think that, but when people are kind of the game of life, they wake up, they're born, when they
Yeah.
get to a age of understanding, why don't they question what's happening, where am I going, how did I get here? Why don't they question these things? But society's just like, bro, don't ask too many questions. Just so drink some coffee.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good
fit
point.
in.
Like coffee culture is like so prevalent. Like nobody questions it. Everybody just does it for no reason.
Yeah, bro. That's so relevant to
good point.
example I give. And it's just like, media's there. It's like, oh, bro, I just want to fit in. Like, imagine that, like, you're on a train, you don't know where it's going. Like, that's the life. That's the analogy of life. Like, you're on this kind of life journey.
Yeah.
And you don't know where you're going to go. But then people around you just like, just don't worry, bro.
Just chill, bro. Just double shot, bro.
So expand on the train analogy then.
Yeah.
You have people around you, passengers, who are people around you in society, right?
And then you just do what they do.
What do you see on trains? People are glued to themselves. They're listening to their own thing, or reading newspapers or books. There's no active interactions or engagements or conversations at all, right? If you do, for example, go to a person in the train and it's a stranger, and you try to conversate with them, you may think like, well, what's going on here? Like, I don't want to really talk to you. You think that you internalize that, to be honest.
And the crazy thing, like just bouncing off what you just said, is that what they're doing, just isolating, just looking at the phones and whatnot, you just conform to that. You just do your own. You're like, okay, weird. This is weird. People don't like being they're not receptive to me going up to them. So you just do your own thing. Forever, you just like sit by yourself and just sit, on your phone. That means that you can take that into like the example of life, where people just doing what everyone else is doing, and just conforming to society. Like they don't even question, like, bro, don't ask too many questions. Get a job, and you'll be happy eventually. Like, but and then you'll die. But don't think too hard. Bro, 60, 70, that's like you probably die then. You're only 20, bro.
Before we get ahead of ourselves, we'll delve straight into the topic, I guess. So, Kib, what is our topic today?
So our topic is Muslim youth culture and identity. And, with this topic, boys, having noticed the reactions of young Muslims around us, people are around our age and a bit younger and a bit older, faced with kind of incidences that happen in social media, in real life, and kind of pressures that test our faith, we want to explore these pressures that we kind of internalize, whether consciously or subconsciously, and we want to kind of reflect our own experiences.
Our own experiences, and how it's been for us.
Since we are navigating through these experiences ourselves, I feel like that's a good way to kick things off in our channel.
Definitely,
yeah, for sure.
So, boys, what would you say has sort of like influenced us personally to become practicing Muslims then?
I think it says in itself practice, right? It takes time, stuff like that. But for me, I guess most people come to a point in their life that's like it hits them. Whereas before that, I'd go like Jumu'ah and stuff. It would be like, I need to practice, but like I wouldn't get into that mindset. But I think it hit me just personally, just that transition from high school to uni, and just seeing how temporary kind of life is, and it's like, oh wow, uni, you're basically in uni to get a job, kids, family, die. And it's like, not only that, you don't even know when you're going to die in that process, right? Could be tomorrow, could be next week. And it's just like, this life is so temporary, right? And there's even a concept of being born and dying, atheists talk about, life and whatnot. But just the idea of being alive and dying is like, in itself, I think it's like a miracle, you know what I mean? So just looking into that made me more practicing, and I guess with the close network of brothers at uni, alhamdulillah, like, it pushes you to new levels, like step by step. It's like, you're going upstairs, a very steep set of stairs, but stairs nonetheless. And and you just get pushed and you want to learn new things, and you realize, certain things, you realize you look into religion, it comes true. But what about you, bro? Like, what do you think happened with you personally?
For me, I'm going to go much more personal. So growing up, there was a lot of confusion, particularly during high school, trying to navigate through the issues that, teenagers face, right? And I was struggling to kind of make sense of growing up while trying to, please my parents and their kind of vision for life, and trying to find my own grounding. And so while going through moments of confusion and disappointment, I would, read up on the Sirah, reflecting on how Prophet Muhammad ﷺ would, react to certain events that happened to him and his interactions with people. And alhamdulillah, I found comfort in, being able to understand his approach to life and alhamdulillah, that inspired me to think more and reflect more and read up more into Islam. It was until I reached university that I got in touch with people that are like-minded, and alhamdulillah was able to build a network. Really so touching on the same concept that Tanzim brought up about the brotherhood, and alhamdulillah, that it plays a really significant role, right?
Like bro, like when I was growing up, like through high school, like my particular school, there was always a close network of brothers. Yeah, so I was always like in the prayer room to always like pray. Also because it was really fun just to have those brothers around me, and that's I think what just having that initial community from the age of 12, it really helped me. But as for when I personally became more invested in the deen, like, and wasn't just going just for the sake of, just because everyone else was going, was sort of from, I would say, like year 10 onwards, I became into like the idea of knowledge for itself and understanding things. I sort of got into like reading and stuff. Even if I wasn't fully committed, I became really sort of keenly aware of the idea that there's a proper way to understand things, yeah? There's a proper way to live your life. There's like, you can't just be unreflective about these things. That you really have to give these thoughts consideration about like, what are we doing here, how you should live your life, is the way society tells you to do things or determines it for you, is that really the way you should go about doing things or not? So it was sort of with that I sort of began my own journey from then on and progressed into uni and met all you brothers and stuff. Like it's just, that's sort of how it's been for me.
With me, like, I want to touch on something quickly before moving on, but like, I think no one brought it up, but the idea of love, like, so like, I may or may have not gone through it personally, or like, just observing through like close friends and stuff like that. I feel like, man, just through high school and before that, even primary, man, like, you're just bombarded with the idea of love, and just like, you find your girlfriend and you become happy and whatever, just through the media and whatnot, just persistently, yeah? And then, even through music, right? Yeah, all you persist is just like love. Like, what else is there to talk about?
Exactly,
really. So, just through that, it's just like your whole concept is just of life is through love, making love and having someone.
Spreading love.
That's a good point.
As if love is a currency that can be exchanged,
But they don't realize, with investing so much love into someone, right? You can essentially destroy you, right? Like, you can't plan it, right? Either they're eventually going to die anyway. So you're going to get your heart broken at the end of it anyway, right? So it's like, for me, what is going to give you eternal happiness, right? Through the love of Allah. And that really hit me, kind of got moving away from society. So, yeah.
So I feel like the common thing we've touched on, based on our stories and observations, is the over-reliance on materialism in order to, serve our life purposes. The idea that, we have to have a certain amount of money, a certain amount of friends, a certain amount of tangible things in our life to be able to, provide meaning in our life, right? So, Islam comes in and shatters that idea. And says, it says that reliance upon Allah is the way to success.
Yeah.
Tawakkul. Sometimes material things won't be able to deliver, like the way, it's intended. So I think, that's a really interesting point, that kind of shapes practicing Muslims' life,
Yeah.
And, if you establish that very early on, that kind of gives you a much stronger foundation in order to navigate through certain, distractions in this life.
Yeah, bro, like if you want to look on the idea on the level of society and just to see how it sort of shapes us and how people in general live, like if we look like on the level of concepts, that the world is sort of shaped in this default way where religion is sort of made to not seem very relevant or important question to your life, that actually living your life doesn't require any concern with that, and that's sort of how people carry themselves just through the whole way. So, like, I think a major point would be that our life is defined around consumption entirely, and the priorities of what's sort of sold to us. Like, you have to care about your job, the maintenance of your house and car, your social life, your own enjoyment, keeping up with whatever you're into, your TV shows, and some time for leisure, like travel and brunches at cafes and stuff. And on top of that, physical exercise. And literally, I would say that contains the bubble of what people concern their lives with. and there's no space for religion in that. Religion is seen as like this additional thing you can have, but it's never actually going to structure your life in any way. The structure's already set for you, it's defined for you, it's there. And that's just how it is. Like, religion is relegated to the space of a private belief that's not going to affect you in any substantial way on how you carry out your life. So what do you guys think?
That's a good
Like,
point,
just
mate.
to add on to that, it's like, in terms of us Islamically, it's beautiful how you mentioned structuring your life,
exactly,
how they structure their life. But for us, the structure to your days of 5 prayers.
Yeah, definitely.
That's how you structure your life, right?
Exactly.
Fajr, you wake up at that time to make your day productive.
Yeah.
The most barakah in the morning. You know what I mean? So our way of structuring life, and I guess the rest of society's way of structuring life, completely different. But what brings more success, right?
Exactly, yeah.
They don't consider that. So yeah.
I think the success, just because you mentioned that, the definitions of success are different. Like, because for us it would be, self-contentment. Like, you being content with a certain level of people around you, money that you acquire, and a certain lifestyle that you have. So Josh, the points that you made were really interesting. I just want to touch on observations for me while in the workforce. Working around non-Muslims, I've realized that their pursuits are quite simplistic in the sense that they go to work to get paid, and then during the whole weekdays they spend time with their work pursuits and stuff like that. But then when they go home and and over the weekends, they only spend time with their families and their friends, and just making the most of what's it called, like catching up on lost time, I guess. Just pursuing frivolous activities and not having a deeper means of thinking. I mean, maybe sometimes they might go to Sunday church and all that stuff, but there isn't that structure that Tanzim mentioned, that 5 daily prayers that keeps you grounded every single day, keeps you mindful. So I just want to touch on a particular incident. The person in question is a Muslim, but it's interesting because if I didn't know him, I could have guessed that he was a non-Muslim by the way he was acting. So I was working at a startup a few months ago. My manager, he adopted the entire culture that the media says about the work hustle and what you got to pursue, right? So he adopts the idea that he has to work late hours. He adopts the ideas that he has to meet meetings more on time than say his prayers. He adopts the idea that he has to stay for drinks after work and stuff like that. Those are kind of points that are inhibiting as Muslims, and being in a situation where you are primarily engaging in that kind of pursuit, where's the room to pursue your deen, right? Where's the room to give dawah or work on your salat and have that safe environment, right? So that's something interesting for me to
in the
mention,
corporate
right?
world, it's sort of like you can't actually progress or sort of have that sort of progression as you want without partaking in the social elements. They're sort of integral to the whole, ladder, if you will, as in you have to enjoy it, and as a Muslim you can't, so you're sort of stuck in this weird limbo place. Well, that's sort of what I've heard from a lot of friends as well. Like, how do you sort of become a part of them, become so friendly with them that you'd want to sort of like go places, but you're sort of like inhibited by your beliefs and stuff? It makes it really hard. You
guys may have noticed that there's people out there, that take up, 2 identities, one in the workforce and one outside.
As in, I've heard of that. As in,
so
see, if you're a Muslim, you sort of have to enforce that separation even more.
But that's
crazy.
Yeah,
it's like
crazy.
a double life.
But that's what society is pushing us towards, having that, that duality. If we want to keep our Islam, then we got to have this.
You have
duality.
to have that duality,
as opposed to everything encompassing itself within the limits.
Like, say in an Islamic framework, you would bring all of the rest, like your Islam, to your work. It would determine the ethics of how you conduct yourself in the workplace, your interactions, your sort of like morals when it comes to like trading and stuff. Obviously that's out of the question now, but because it's determined by the economy and the market forces, we have no control over that. So we have to do our best in a personal sense, like keep up with the prayers at work and just fast and sort of maintain our gender interaction, like propriety and stuff. But it's just, I can see what you mean. It becomes really hard.
Taking away from
you agree with that?
I think in that sense there's this work kind of hustle in life you have to go through, and then mixing Islam into that picture. But I feel like these ideas and concepts these seeds are like planted when you're in high school or even in primary, right? This whole time through your schooling life, you're just climbing that kind of year after year, thinking, okay, I'm gonna get closer to HSC, I need to start doing well. Alhamdulillah, obviously we need to do well, right? To get a good degree can fund. For our family, that's as a Muslim, that's our intention, right?
Yeah,
inshallah, we try to make that intention, yeah. But I feel like the whole kind of hustle, in reality, right? You're gonna climb a ladder of some sort, reaching in this dunya, like in how the Western world is structured. You're gonna be climbing a ladder, yeah. It comes from high school. You're gonna climb, whatever marks you need to get to a certain point, right? And then your whole university life, you need to climb to a certain point, right? When you're at work, you need to climb to a certain social, like, you realize 60k is not enough, 70k. You keep climbing this ladder, like this kind of mental ladder, your whole life. They think like from high school, like, oh, there's just gonna be that one time success, happy, da da da. No, mate, it's not gonna happen. Well, for some people, like, I'm not gonna say it's not gonna happen. For some people, might. Yeah, but this whole life you're just climbing a ladder. But me personally, I feel like it's embedded into the high school scene. Yeah, and it starts from the idea of just always having good marks. Yeah, as Muslims, we want to have good marks to just get into whatever course we need to do to enough to provide for our family, have a easier life, right? But you think about it from, I guess, maybe people who don't have that in their mind. Why they're really striving to get more good marks? Yeah, is it kind of I want to be successful, or in that moment they just want to prove and show off to their kind of friends and just prove that I'm better than you. I want to do this. I want to be prefect, get good marks, so I got a rep going around.
Yeah, but I feel like it's sort of reinforced, especially in selective schools,
exactly,
which we have experience with, and especially like selective schools added with like a Asian parent mentality, Asian curry as in ethnic parent mentality, as in it sort of compounds for us. It becomes doubly so. So we want to do it over the top, a lot of us. But yeah, you were saying?
Yeah, just on, I guess the foundation is kind of ego. We talk about foundation of our life being like the 5 prayers and stuff. For them, it's kind of ego, maybe arrogance, and that maybe idea of just trying to be successful, yeah? But then it slowly moves on to not just that kind of experience in high school, but the social element in high school that it kind of transfers into your work life. You just think, okay, I'm with, whatever, hang with non-Muslims, but I'm going to, free mixing in abundance is fine. You hang with your friends because they're nice, even though they drink alcohol. Oh, it's not going to affect me, at least they're nice, This is a kind of facade, right? It's just like a false kind of...
Yeah, there's a lot to be said about that, bro. It's really interesting. As in, being nice, I found, is like the yardstick with which people can justify anything.
Exactly.
It's just just because people are nice doesn't mean you should associate with them. There's so much more behind all that, the ideologies that sort of determine their life, their thoughts about where they're headed, what's the final destination, that sort of thing. It's really basic, but at the end of the day, we sort of compromise just because they're nice to be around. There's so much more to consider when you're determining your close friends and stuff.
And I think at the end of the day, the concept of being nice is sugarcoated just to kind of follow your desires.
Exactly, sugarcoating.
It literally is. So in essence, we kind of broke it down. I think the essence of it is desires. Your desires to kind of be rich, successful, your desires to have that ego, your desires to have this, impress that girl with your marks or whatnot. I think that root of it, just following your desires, and people don't realize it's a very kind of on a subconscious level. It's really deep, yeah. So I feel like this whole society is kind of based on desires.
Yeah, bro, that's exactly what I've sort of come to understand through a lot of my study. That the concepts that determine that in this society for us, it's called liberalism. Liberalism just means everything comes down to you as an individual and your own agency and desire to determine your life as you want. And at the end of the day, what do you have as an individual guiding you? Nothing but your desires, right? Mm-hmm. So that's literally what it comes back down to. And there's no sort of religious theme that guides the society as there was in past societies. So there's nothing holding down or inhibiting that self, that liberal self that just... once its desires fulfilled, that sort of thing. Now it's sort of unleashed. Now it's just sort of runs society, you know what I mean? And especially with advertising and all that, sure. It just reinforces it for us that it's okay to do it.
But think about it. What's the alternative that are being sold to us as Muslims growing up? What's the alternative from an Islamic point of view that's being sold to us? There isn't a halal alternative that's being readily available to Muslims. when you're growing up, because they're told to don't do this, don't do that in terms of pursuing, in terms of growing up, right? It's reprimand as opposed to guidance towards a more halal, more constructive solution. That's why we're getting bombarded with this liberal idea of how to live your life, and that's what we need to kind of focus on moving forward. We need to be able to tell our youth that there are halal ways to be successful in your life. You don't need to pursue what the non-Muslims are doing. You don't need to work 70, 80 hours, with a side hustle, trying to get all these
side hustle,
trying to get a property in near the sea and stuff like that. You don't need to have all these like lavish lifestyle ideals.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, it's like adding on to what you said. They can't rely on just society. They can't rely on society for morality. That's how basically what it lies around. Because the Muslims us growing up, we perceive society to define morality. Yeah, so we need to break away from that and think, hey, where does morality actually stem from? Islamically, it should be objective morality, right? Which is from Allah. Yeah. And I think that's not really persisted in with the youth, and we need to see that through that lens, through the Islamic lens.
The culturing isn't there when you're growing up in primary school, high school. The culturing isn't there while you're at the workplace, and the culturing isn't there while you're interacting with non-Muslims and engaging with your life like that in social media, internet. There's nothing like that to kind of ground you to like, all right, this is how I am supposed to be as a Muslim. This is the best outcome for me. There's nothing reinforcing that culturing. Yeah, until it's like you've already been bombarded with all these kind of exciting, albeit it's temporary, but it's all exciting. And these are things that you can grasp onto. You seeing other people, you're able to, this guy has, an awesome lifestyle. Why can't I have an awesome lifestyle? And people would just get obsessed with this idea, and that kind of internalizes it even further. Without, having an Islamic background, Islamic grounding, those ideas just, like you said, it just becomes out of control.
Yeah, exactly, but just the point about that, see, back in the day, our ancestors, they didn't have to think so hardly about this, because they lived in, a society determined by Islamic principles. So you've heard the saying, it takes a village to raise a kid, right? So back in the day, society would do its job in guiding the youth in the right direction. As in, you have the mosque, you have, the marketplace, and, where things are, Islamic morals are sort of held in place. Everyone's sort of going about their lives in a way that's Islamically fulfilling, and your options for marriage, career, it's all set up in the same path for you. But fast forward to Western society, where we're living now, as the sons and daughters of immigrants, we don't have that. We're completely uprooted from all that. So we have to keep ourselves sheltered from this society and sort of have a different space, a sort of more private upbringing, where we're sort of sheltered and have the right mentoring and stuff. That's what I feel like we need here.
So here's the thing I've noticed. There are two conflicting effects that are being played while you're being raised, right? You're being told that you are, to preserve the family, traditions, to preserve those values, you need to stay in this bubble, within the community, within something more familiar.
I would say that's.
And at the same time, you are being constantly bombarded by this idea of comparison. Social media is telling you that this guy's doing this, give you constant updates on their life. How do you react in a more fulfilling way? The default reaction is you kind of feel he's doing awesome for him, or she's doing awesome for herself. But you kind of reflect, am I really doing well? What are your kind of standards of success? And the more you see people acquiring material wealth, material success, the more you kind of are inclined to that. But on the other hand, say if you grow up seeing the good that staying grounded in Islam does for you, you are living a healthy lifestyle, you're able to communicate very well with your family members, your community members, you're engaging in real projects that are affecting the community, you're seeing the effects, as opposed to somebody that's pursuing a degree or pursuing a HSC or something like that, and they're always bombarded by this vision of post-retirement bliss, right? As opposed to post-dunya Jannah, right?
Yeah. And at the end of the day, I feel like the youth just need to think about death more. We need to embrace the fact that yes, we're gonna die, right? And I feel there's a hadith, right? Prophet Muhammad said, the smartest of those are who think about death often, right? And I feel like you have all the scientists and atheists and whatnot. They want to kind of justify what they believe in, right, through so-called intellect, right? But in fact, they just have this kind of desire not to worship God, but they just layer on top of so-called intelligence and intellect. But really, it's just a kind of manifestation of what they want to do. Essentially, they just want to do what they do, which is desires, yeah? So I feel like we need to step away from that and be more smart and humble ourselves and get that ego to the side and be like, look, our kind of version of success is in the akhirah, right? And so we need to look into that and going towards that line. It's not like, hey, we're just going to approach death. No, we have to set ourselves up in this dunya, right? And then you have to kind of layer out, okay, what's going to happen first? Get a good, solid, like not crazy hour kind of job. Support the family. Do my, try to do as much, dawah and stuff in any way, shape or form. Just spread Islam. Do my thing, and inshallah, do good deeds. And yeah, that's what it should be geared towards. So just starting it with death, basically.
Yeah, exactly, bro. That's a fascinating thing you say about death. Like it's interesting. Like right now, in one of my philosophy courses, I'm studying a philosopher. His name is Heidegger, right? He's known as like one of the best European philosophers of the past century. It's sort of the highest pinnacle that European philosophy has reached, and he's sort of, you could say, the most sort of on the right path with regards to these things in continental philosophy. He says the exact same thing after so much. He sort of evaluates the whole Western philosophical tradition and says it's all gone the wrong way and it needs to reorient itself. And so what he does is he places death at the center. He says pretty much the same thing that you said, that hadith. He says people asked him in a lecture once how do you think people should improve their lives? He said we should look to spend more time at the graveyards, reflect on our death, and that will bring about a more authentic idea of what it is for us to live once we contemplate and understand our temporality. He didn't obviously have the full picture, but he's sort of you can see even
kind of on the path.
Even the best philosophers are sort of coming to realize that no, they got it wrong and they have to reorient everything. Otherwise, there's no hope for humanity. That's literally what he said. Modern man is just gone astray. There's nothing left for us.
And I think that's just a reflection on the youth today as well.
Exactly.
Right?
As in, if you look at the current world, that's exactly his words ring true. What are people doing? What the hell are we doing now?
That's true. People don't know how to spend time.
Exactly.
It's effectively. I think it was Hamza used to talk. He's just people, when they say the term kill time, and it's an insult. It's what are you why are you saying that? Why are you killing time? Every time should be used, with meaning, absolutely, with purpose, should have barakah in it.
Yeah, exactly.
We should look to spend more time just to, do dhikr, all these other things you can do. So,
we've touched on the challenges, but let's kind of break down the reasons why, there is this kind of barrier between fulfilling the Islamic spirit, fulfilling that, in a holistic sense, not just not in a closet sense, not in within a community sense, but within entire, society level.
Yeah.
And why are we seeing this trend about, Muslims kind of dropping in Iman and, dropping out of practice altogether, It's something that's, we should definitely be looking into as a society. But boys, I want to get your thoughts on this.
Definitely, it is obviously a problem, and I feel the essence of it is kind of, I touched on it before, kind of the idea of, okay, Islam is this primitive thing. Every time you hear about Islam, it's just Sharia law and cut off the hand when they steal. It's literally it. And they don't realize Sharia law is such a complex, deep thing, and subhanAllah, it's brought so many things to the current kind of democracy laws that we live in. It's a pinnacle of modern back then, during the times it kind of revolutionized society, Sharia law, but they just see it as this primitive thing from the desert or whatever, So when Muslims are kind of exposed to just that kind of small little picture of Islam, it turns them off. And not only that, when I guess media and TV and stuff hail New Age science and atheism as the next big thing, and just kind of culture people into believing in atheism, that's when it looks appealing, because they're only bombarded with that and Gnosticism and all that, and it's hey, science will work this, but they don't realize that not only just scientists come to kind of some sort of element of empirical truth, so using empirical evidence, you have to study philosophy of science as well to establish logic and reasoning on top of that, and they don't. That kind of philosophy of science is pushed aside. They only look at empirical evidence. You know what I mean? It's the Earth, we have evidence that Earth existed for billions of years. That means there's no God, because in the Bible it says it's only a few tens of thousands of years or something like that.
Yeah.
That's literally how they come to conclusions like that. It's crazy,
Bro,
right?
they're not even actually following science. They're just following pop culture. They don't
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
know what science means. It's just like people just like following the herd, as you could say. As in, people don't have any personal understanding of
And
what science's
yeah,
true
exactly.
conclusions are.
And at the same time, it's like there's a book. It's called Darwinism as a religion. Like there's literally a book written by an
Okay.
atheist called Darwinism as a religion. So that's a proof that it is a religion, right?
Okay.
And people are getting cultured into it. Yeah?
Wow.
It's crazy.
Okay,
It's
yeah.
like how this kind of world. Like I'm not anti-science. You know, Islam has a rich history of science and all that. But it's the fact of using science as a yardstick. But when it only deals with kind of physical, empirical truths, but it kind of completely forgets about spirituality. How did we derive consciousness? We can't derive these things from like
definitely.
just on a naturalistic sense. So it's like all these things. It's kind of emphasized, and we just forget about spirituality. That's where religion just like, oh, that's that thing on the side.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I agree with the idea that the revelation wahi isn't consciously being reflected upon the Muslims growing up in their decision making, and I agree with the idea that people are turned off or embarrassed by the idea of Islam. That's why they are more inclined to step away or drop in iman, right? The idea I want to touch on is that the deen is tawakkul, and trust in Allah, that your deeds are being accepted, that you are being rewarded,
Yeah, definitely.
and that the hardships that you undergo they will be turned into ajr by the will of Allah. But the idea of the dunya is that it's instant gratification. You are seeing the fruits of your labor in front of your eyes. So this idea of like the sensorial obsession that has played into people's psyche a lot.
Yeah.
In the this idea of seeing is believing, right? You see somebody's vision in life, and you see that they're doing amazing, right? They have multiple houses, they have multiple cars, they have multiple bank accounts, they have a side hustle here and there, So this idea, the youth are being sold. What's the halal alternative that we as Muslims are selling? What's the halal, like what, sunnah fitness, halal entrepreneurship? There's nothing that's completely unique for us. You know what I mean? It's just trying to halalify the current surroundings.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
that's a good point.
That's a
Is
good
it's halalifying the basis of what's in like Western society?
Yeah.
Like, you can't make it halal.
As opposed to giving something like holistic.
Yeah,
in
I
Islam,
get you. Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, I totally get you.
Yeah, I mean, and we need
It's crazy,
and we
yeah.
definitely need to address this if we want to see improvements in the youth culture.
Yeah. Like, bro, I feel like it's it's like on the most basic level, like the in terms of like why people disbelieve or drop out of faith and stuff. Like, I think we just need to be more reflective about our lifestyles. Like, just because like the life we live is like similar or validated by wider society does not mean it's the correct way to live your life.
Absolutely.
That's what people do, as in they have a certain way they go about things and it goes unchallenged because it's like sort of like in vogue. That's what everyone's doing.
And they're nice as well.
Yeah, exactly. Literally best. And so they feel no need to question it. They're just like, this is just what life is. And that's just how you go on decades after end.
It's
And you just
crazy.
you just adapt yourself to the latest fad or technology or whatever, and that's literally the cycle of Western society. It just gives you new stuff, but it's literally the same.
But here's the reactions from Muslims. It's either you are fully constricting their ideas, like no, you cannot pursue this idea, or it's like full freedom, like oh, you do whatever you want.
Yeah, bro.
There isn't that.
You have to find that balance.
There isn't that guidance. Like okay, your decisions are being informed on these principles, right? For me, I personally want to see improvements in this landscape, and I feel like mentoring is the way to go.
Yeah.
100% that the people that have gone through this, or a few years older than us, they need to come back into the fold of the society and be able to inform the youth. And just tell them, hey, like, these ideas that you have about, retirement and living as an adult, it's not all that.
Bro,
it's,
that's
it's not all that,
so
it's
crucial.
not all that,
Yeah.
You gotta have, first of all, enjoy your youth, but also have a grounded vision that takes time to develop.
To just quickly touch on the retirement bit, this is like, mate, Savannah, like, I was talking to my close, one of my good mates, Jaffran, and he's just like, he works in engineering firm, and he's just like, all these old guys that retire and stuff, they just think they're living their life after because they got all this dosh. and just travel around the world. Bro, they come back to work in a few years because they have nothing to do. How crazy is that?
Oh, legit?
Well, the whole life,
bored,
we
yeah.
bowled.
Wow,
We've
okay.
they've literally worked towards retirement, and then they did whatever they did, and they're just like
Yeah.
at home, just like I have nothing to do. I'm just gonna work again.
That's crazy.
And they just
Yeah.
work for the rest of their life.
Because all the other friends are working, and so they're like,
Wow.
well, what do you do?
So it's like you've built your whole life to that point, and just
Yeah,
go back
that's
to work.
crazy.
Is that all you're gonna do with your
Man,
life?
that's like a slap in the face.
Yeah,
like all that thing
100%.
you spent all that time, visioning yourself, working hard, and then all of a sudden you got it, and it was like, huh.
Yeah.
Huh.
But Islamically,
Doesn't
we
fulfill
don't
me.
we don't have that work-life dichotomy. As in Islamically, there's no retirement per se.
Yeah.
Just like as long as you're living your life by certain principles, like people usually, like our ancestors, they just worked until they couldn't anymore because
Yeah,
they had to
exactly.
provide for their families, right?
Exactly.
We have a different way of understanding
And,
that.
Yeah, I think it's like a
Yeah.
mental thing as well, because like okay, I'm gonna work towards 65, and then like retire and whatnot, and you've built that like mental picture, yeah, and the whole life you're just like, oh, I'm getting tired of work and because that mental picture you have to retire 65, just that mental picture, yeah.
Yeah.
After you hit that, you're just like, oh, I'm free and stuff, but in fact you just
Your whole life's already
you're just
gone.
distracted,
Yeah.
and then
It's crazy.
it's crazy. It's like whole life, as you said, Islamically, you just work your whole life. You don't see your whole life as okay, I'm gonna retire at one point. You just say, okay, I'm just gonna provide for my family. When you change the dynamics,
No, yeah.
that shift in mindset, I think it just changes
Yeah.
your way of just viewing.
Yeah,
how-
Islamically, you don't have that goal to anywhere because you have to live in the moment. As in, am I doing the right
Absolutely.
thing right now? That's sort of what it is. But I keep going to your point about mentoring. Like, I find, it's so crucial because I've sort of had that experience where, alhamdulillah, like I've been blessed. Like I've had this brother. I've sort of had his mentorship for over 2 years now.
Alhamdulillah.
It's sort of like whatever form it takes. I sort of had like a weekly halakha sort of thing going. One of the older brothers, he's such a good brother. As in, a lot of people know him well. A lot of the brothers here, but he's like helped me so much in terms of just getting my like vision and bearing on the world, right? What's important, what's not, and understanding Islam and its wider relevance to society and everything. And it just helped so much. That was probably the most crucial thing. Like even if I was personally straying, I felt like because I had that every week to come back to, it kept me grounded.
Yeah, like
Can
you,
you share
like
that
you mentioned,
bubble?
I'll tell you later on.
like you mentioned that that confusion and those problems that you face, you can immediately be able to get solutions from that, or be able to immediately get
Exactly,
a
definitely.
proper
Right.
understanding.
That's what I felt.
Makes
as in,
sense of
if
that.
if I had ever to refer back to someone about some problems I was going through, he was always sort of there for me.
But here's the
apparently.
thing: many of the youth grow up. They experience problems that either they haven't received the most effective of solutions according to Islam.
Yeah.
But they don't kind of first of all, they don't actively pursue other opinions, or they don't deeply reflect on the reality of why this is happening, but also that they don't get any solutions from us. Like, what are the halal alternatives that we're providing them, right? That's the key missing piece, in my opinion. There is no halal alternative. It's reprimand. People are controlling you. Like, no, you can't go there. No, you can't pursue this. It's like that. But there's no like grooming towards like the more beneficial outcome, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Then mentoring, I feel like, plays a role in that. Like, if people that are more knowledgeable in the Quran and Sunnah, they're able to give you advice and ground your decisions on the most effective benefit, not just the most immediate benefit, like accruing value, money, and stuff like that.
And I think just quickly adding, like it's on topic, but it's slightly off. It's just like the whole idea of just being embedded those Muslim cultural values. I think it starts from when you're like very young. Yeah, if you're a baby, if your mum read like short stories from the Quran or Sunnah and stuff like that, right? It's like the khutbah MIA last time. Yeah, like Sheikh Bizri. Loving for the sake of Allah, like he said some really,
out to Bizri.
yeah. So he said some amazing stuff. It got me thinking. It's like all the Western kind of media, they've stolen all the stories from the Quran and Sunnah, yeah. And he talked about Kung Fu Panda.
Oh yeah.
He's like,
I heard that.
he was just
That's
talking
really
about how it's like basically the story of Musa alayhi salam,
That's
yeah,
it, absolutely.
100%, and they just took that. So it's like. Basically what I'm saying is like you have these stories, it's like in the Quran it says these are the best of stories, right?
Yeah.
So if you embed those stories and you just because those are very good stories for your kids, they bring up your improve your morals and stuff, judgmental skills and what's right and what's wrong, what's morally good and bad.
Yes.
It's like if you get those embedded into you in a young age, subhanAllah, you'll be attached to the Quran and Sunnah.
Yeah,
your
like
whole life.
One for Kids program, Zaki and Friends, sort of like they're the only like major presence in like the media in terms of youth entertainment, youth education programs
Yeah.
for the Muslims. So that's something also we need to look into. Having
Yeah.
youth programs that are tailored towards them.
But just the point about what you said about like little kids are like mothers telling their children stories. Like that's like so beneficial at a subconscious level. We don't even realize.
Exactly.
Like I've heard this from a lecture by Sheikh Hamza Yusuf. He was saying a lot of men in their 30s and 40s, they return to the deen, they start praying again, and that's after a lifetime of like ignoring the deen and forgetting about what's important. And the reason they give for doing so is they say, when I was young, I saw my mother praying. And that's, subhanAllah, like, think about that. As in, just because of that, they were able to return. Like, imagine, like, and there's so much else that they didn't have in that process. Like, they didn't have in their teens, early 20s, that could have, like, brought them back to the right path earlier on, which is sort of what we need.
There's so much hope. Yeah. There's so much hope and potential with Islam, subhanAllah. We just need to tap into it.
I just think just more maybe mosque and musallas and stuff geared towards the youth in general. Just like I know subhanAllah, like a lot of people, organizations doing that. Maybe just kind of keep up with the youth in terms of what they do, what they're interested, because I think that's not catered towards to kind of bring them
being more accessible, to be able to talk to, be able to, have an open dialogue. Yeah,
exactly.
One final thing I want to raise as a means of changing the landscape moving forward is that you actively get the youth involved in key decision making processes, not just within the family, maybe perhaps in the community. Like for example, how do you want to approach the next Islamic program that you have in your community, or what's the next event that you want to see in your local musalla or your mosque? So have this open forum for youth to just actively participate and kind of voice their own priorities and opinions. I feel like that needs to be there, and I feel like that's unfortunately not there very early on. That kind of cultural grooming needs to be there, and I feel like we've raised some very well points for listeners to reflect on. So inshallah, we see some benefit from all that talk, right?
Alright, so thank you everyone for joining us on our episode 1, and we hope you'll join us again in the future. If you have any questions for us, then hit us up on our email, or on our Facebook page. Our email address is boysinthecave@gmail.com. So yeah, we hope to see you next time inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.